reports with maybe onboard imagery that the attacking aircraft take, overhead imagery of various degrees of resolution, and maybe other human intelligence reports, intercepted communications, and sometimes you don't get a full picture until later. And I also point out that as somebody who was also a weapons inspector in Iraq in the immediate aftermath of the Gulf War, and many of the sites that we were inspecting had been bombed, and these were sites that I was familiar with while we were bombing them, I was able to, also get a feel for what I, as a battle damage assessment officer, thought had happened and what had actually happened. And oftentimes they're two totally different things. So, what I'm trying to say is, we have an Israeli version of events. And I would note that a lot of the more extravagant claims aren't made by the Israeli government, but by so-called open source intelligence or people claiming to have sources within these. But we don't have an official Israeli statement put out by the Israeli government that says, for instance, I don't believe I've seen anything from the Israeli government says we've destroyed all of Iran's air defense systems. I didn't see anything from the Israeli government that matched the extraordinary claim of over 640 targets being hit. Just going to tell you that's a very unlikely number. It's not possible with what Israel has, but we'll leave that. And on the other hand, the notion that a nation that has the advanced capabilities of a state like Israel doing nothing, achieving no results whatsoever, is likewise also not plausible. So the Iranian claim to have shot down everything, or that the Israelis missed everything, or what they did was very limited, is likewise not a plausible statement. I know why both sides are saying it. I know why the Israelis want to claim to, want the perception to have accomplished significant results. They're trying to establish deterrence. And if they can create the perception that Israel is capable of inflicting harm on Iran at will, they're hoping to deter Iran from further actions. And the Iranians, don't want to broadcast any actual weaknesses. So if Israel was able to penetrate Iranian defenses, Iran doesn't want to own up to that and admit to it. So they'll deny it in an effort to identify how this penetration took place and what can be done to fix it going forward. Likewise, where they've enjoyed successes, they don't necessarily want to highlight that too much because, confirmation of technical capability, again, is something that Israel can build upon to seek to overcome next time. So we're looking at two parties that are still in a hostile adversarial relationship where there's a real potential of continued military action by either side. And it's clear that we're not going to get the truth anytime soon about what happened on the Israeli attack. But the intelligence data that was leaked by the United States, whether inadvertently or on purpose, indicated that Israel was going to launch an attack that made use of at least 56 air-launched ballistic missiles, so-called air-launched ballistic missiles. The ROCs, which is a version that Israel had used previously to strike an S-300 radar on April 19th near Isfahan. Again, whether it was successful or not, it depends on who you believe. And then what was called the Golden Horizon, which appears to be a adaptation of the Sparrow series of air-launched ballistic missile targets. There's the Black Sparrow, which was supposed to replicate a Scud missile similar to those fired by Iraq during the Gulf War. The Silver Sparrow was supposed to replicate the Shahed-3 missile of Iran, several of which were fired both during True Promise 1 and True Promise 2. And I think it's a modification of the Silver Sparrow known as the Blue Sparrow, which Israel uses not as a target, but as an actual offensive weapon. 18 of these were prepared for strikes. They have a longer range than the Rock. So, the old mission planner in me would say that you're going to use these shorter range systems to take out air defense, carving a path through a seam in the Iranian defenses so that the Golden Horizon or Blue Sparrow missiles will be able to reach the intended targets, probably in the vicinity of Tehran. I actually wrote an article before the strike that speculated that the likely destination of the target for Israel would be the Parchin ballistic missile production facility outside of Tehran, because this is where the ballistic missiles that were used by Iran to strike Israel were made. So there's a direct relationship if in terms of retaliatory strike between the targets being struck and what had been done. But also given the rhetoric that Benjamin Netanyahu was employing in the lead up, talking about the decisive nature of the Israeli action and linking it to similar decisive strikes against Hezbollah, the assassination of Nasrallah, and the killing of Hamas leadership, there was a possibility that Israel would seek to strike Iranian leadership targets, a decapitation strike. And again, when you look at the size of a 56 air-launched ballistic missile strike, both target sets could be handled with the amount of strike capacity that was in that. But to give you an example, during the Gulf War, when we struck the Taji missile production facility, repair facility, storage facility just north of Baghdad, the opening strike was carried out by 35 air-launched cruise missiles launched by B-52 bombers. And depending on the specific target, you would either attach one missile to it, or if it was an important target, two missiles to it, because redundancy adds to the increased likelihood of destruction of the getting the proper destructive effects on the target to destroy the target. And so we launched 35 missiles against 8 distinct targets. So when somebody's saying that Israel struck 640 targets inside Iran, that's just an impossibility. To launch 640 air-launched ballistic missiles, you would need, because the best you're going to get is 2 per aircraft, one on each of the designated hard points underneath either an F-15I or an F-16I. And F-35 will not carry these weapons. You would need to do 600, you'd need over 300 F-15Is and F-16Is, and Israel doesn't have that many. So it's just an absurdity to put that many targets out there. To carry out this strike, you needed at a minimum, if it's 56, you needed, around 30 strike aircraft. Although some of the aircraft will probably only carry a single weapon, again, depending on the phase that you're in. Each time you put the planes up, you need to combat air patrol. My understanding is that this strike took place in 3 waves of attacks. You're probably looking at around 10 aircraft, 20 air-launched ballistic missiles per wave. Each wave will require its own independent combat air patrol, that is, aircraft overhead, making sure no enemy aircraft infringe on the release point. No Israeli fixed-wing aircraft penetrated Iranian airspace. That's not the way this attack worked. This attack, had the Israelis launching air-launched ballistic missiles from a release point to the north of Baghdad in Salahuddin province, probably over a airbase that at one point in time had a significant American and Israeli Balad Air Base in that vicinity. It's an area that Israel is familiar with. The Israelis operated there during the American occupation of Iraq from 2003 up until 2011. And they have familiarity. Israeli aircraft have flown this route before. And so they went and they released from Salahuddin. You had a combat air patrol